All right, so before I left work today, I started picking up on a pattern that I've noticed with all of my cougar ladies from work. I have about a dozen women that I talk to on the average day, ranging from 25 to, I would say, 60s, the oldest. But in all my conversations with them, I've noticed that there's a simple undertone and it is extreme loneliness out there. And you're talking about women with young kids, with adult kids, women who have been divorced or in their 50s. And I'm noticing this more and more. And this is what ChatGPT said about this. Society is lonelier than ever. And while some try to mask it, you, millennial team, are picking up on an emotional undercurrent that most people try to ignore. Before I get into today's video, remember, do this for me. Subscribe, donate, or leave a comment. Please don't leave any stupid comments either. I was reading one this morning from a guy who said, you know, your type of propaganda telling people what they can't do and won't do. And he was referring to all of the jobs that are done by migrants: meat packing, farming, hospitality, restaurant, you name it. There's a reason why these people do those jobs. It's because they're very poorly paid jobs and they're very hard. And for you to come onto my channel and say, oh, I'll do that work, maybe one person. But I remember reading a statistic about trying to get Americans into farming, and no matter what they did, they won't do it because it's too hard. So, with that said, let's explore this topic a little more before I get into my main talking points. As a person that's been socially isolated since the moment I was born, I was never accepted by my family. Society's rejected me, and the opposite sex doesn't really care for my kind. And today, while I was talking to one of my coworkers, I could definitely sense why people do not like technology workers. He was weird, he was awkward. It was a conversation that should never have happened. And the irony is that one of the other school presidents called me up yesterday to ask me, what's wrong with this guy? And I'm like, he's just a person that spends more time tinkering with computers and tinkering with women. These guys aren't made for dating. They're not relationship material. These are guys that should be locked in a basement for the rest of their lives and throw away the key, because that's where I belong. I belong locked up in the basement, probably chained up in there, away from society, because let's just face it, I'm weird. I run a strange YouTube channel. I have a very bizarre job in which I can't stand. In fact, the receptionist today told me that you really don't like your job here, do you? And I had a recruiter tell me the same thing. You don't like working here a couple of weeks ago. But none of us want to work. In fact, I was having this conversation with Gen Z today because I was asking him, it's like, if your family is rich, why didn't they do more to set you up to be a winner? Because Gen Z acknowledges the one thing that everyone that comes into contact with me in real life or online is that we're all screwed. And telling yourself that you're not screwed because you think that things will get better is just you lying to yourself. Don't lie to yourself. Your career's going nowhere. You're going nowhere. You're not going to meet anyone. And your life is going to stay like it never started. That's how it feels in my life. I've worked my whole life. I own nothing. I don't have any friends. I don't have any family. I have nothing to look forward to. And this is the way it's always been. And currently, I have the best paying job I've ever had in my entire life. And I'm still struggling like you wouldn't believe in order to be able to make ends meet. But here we are on this channel together somehow. And lately, the more people that look like on the outside that they wouldn't be suffering from loneliness are. 2 weeks ago on Saturday, when I met Jill at the salon for the first time, the isolation and loneliness that was seeping out of her pores in front of me was enough to make you just want to squeeze this person because they were so lonely. When you can tell me that your best friend is your cat, and a lot of people depend on pets in order to keep themselves to give themselves something to live for. And I remember the first time that someone said this to me, and it was a few years back, and I was working at that call center at Insight, and one of my fellow call center workers, he was severely depressed. He didn't like my attitude towards work, and he said, "Man, a person like you, where would you end up getting a job other than a place that really doesn't like workers?" And I said to him, "It's like you're working here too." And he's like, somehow he brought up his pet. He was a pretty young guy too. I'd say he was probably, I'm going to say 26, 27 years old at the time, because he'd recently gotten out of school, but also had worked in security for many, many years. So maybe he was older than I thought. Anyhow, he told me that the only reason he didn't end up not existing anymore was because he felt like he needed to make certain that his cat had food every day. And that was the only thing keeping him going. And I thought, oh my God, that is one of the saddest things that I've ever heard. Because I don't like babies and I don't like animals. And so it's not like I have anything against them, but anything that goes number two, I'm going to stay away from. But it made me believe that the isolation and I'm going to call it fear that's out there right now is rampant. We're all scared. We all don't know what's going to happen. And I told you guys this on this channel at least, I don't know how many times, many, many times, that somehow that people were going to end up in a situation in which extreme loneliness was going to have to be something that you had to get used to. And it's not like the people that I'm talking about don't have families, don't have friends, don't have religion. They're just feeling an isolation and loneliness and fear because of the present condition of the world. Things aren't good out there. And regardless of what you hear in the media, they're not good. And they're not planning on getting any better. Evil Corp doesn't plan on raising wages across the board just because inflation is becoming unlivable. You have to figure out how you're going to survive this in this day and age, because the wages aren't helping you. I've said this so many times, is that hourly work is the work of the devil himself, because there's no way to get by on the wages that they're willing to offer, especially at the lower tier jobs. And with that said, I'm moving off on a tangent. I want to get back on track here with my 4 talking points. The illusion of connection. Social media makes it seem like we're more connected than ever. But the reality is that social media has forced us into seeing images of people living their best lives while we're sitting at home in our underwear talking to a microphone in a dark room. I have no place to be, I have no one to see, and I have nothing to look forward to other than fleece at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. That's not a life. I'm not alive. And I'm not definitely not connected to any sort of society. I live in a box. I'm angry. I'm resentful. I'm full of malcontent towards a society that doesn't like me and that doesn't want me here. A lot of my videos are around this topic, in which single men are not welcome in this world. It's the society has pushed us to the point where we feel so unwelcome everywhere we go that we stop going anywhere. You don't feel welcome at the gym, at the grocery store, at work. It's like the single man is a leper in our society, and nobody wants to be around him. People question why. Why are you like this? It's because you have no way of connecting with a society that doesn't want you to exist. Single men should be brought to a town square. A giant abyss with flames at the bottom should open up from the ground. The door should open up, and every week we should throw in hundreds of these unwanted individuals into that pit. And I'll be the first one in line, because what I've felt my whole life shouldn't be the way that normal people feel towards life. And I keep feeling it. When I meet people, even people who have kids, who are married, who are connected to life. When you look at them and you talk to them, there's that feeling, there's that epidemic of loneliness in our society. And you're just like, well, how do we fix this? We don't. We created this back in 2020. Around the pandemic, these feelings were released out to the public of hopelessness and loneliness that we have never been able to put back in the bottle. You know, it's like when you squeeze the toothpaste tube. Once it's out, you're not putting it back in there. And society's having difficulty coping with these feelings. And a lot of people will try to say no, it's not me. I can tell. Something inside of me from growing up and spending my entire life alone makes me an incredibly capable person at detecting loneliness in others. Even when you smile, even when you put on your cheery attitude, everything you do to hide your loneliness, I know. And I'm feeling it more and more every single day. Everywhere that I walk around and I interact with people, I feel it. And it's very unnerving to me to constantly feel the loneliness in other people because it makes me feel even worse. Because imagine a person that has my upbringing meeting a person and looking at them and thinking, oh my God, this person has everything they want. They have a significant other, they have a good job. Their life on the surface level looks like everything's right. But you talk to them for a little while and that illusion falls apart very quickly. Talking point number 2, the post-pandemic social shift. The pandemic forced isolation on everyone. Many people never fully recovered socially. I don't think that people can fully recover. I think that not being able to recover is only natural for something that was a very unnatural thing for a lot of people. My the memories that stand out to me the most from the pandemic are standing at that park with caution tape surrounding the playground. Like something was definitely wrong. Like we between the social distancing and the masks and people not being anywhere, sitting at home for hundreds of days, isolated. I mean, for the first few months it was great, but after it started dragging on for years, that was the hard part. Is that you wondered what kind of world would happen after this. And I think a recovery isn't feasible because it forced people who had never had to live that way to live in a way in which you had to somehow talk yourself into believing that everything was okay, despite the mask, despite the news, despite widespread belief that half the population wouldn't be here at the end. What the pandemic showed is that there's a certain portion of our society that was always and always has been disposable. And those are low level citizens, the people that were labeled essential. Those were the people that weren't going to make it. And I think about some of those people and I wonder, did we have to do that? And the answer is no. But it happened. And I think we're dealing with the aftermath now, still years later. Like we can't return to normal. Like we don't even know what normal is anymore. That's how I feel every day. I don't know what normal is anymore. Is normal paying $10 for eggs? Is normal making a wage that you can never support yourself on? What is normal? Like they've tried to normalize what should never be accepted as an ordinary life. Our overall quality of life has diminished to the point where I wonder whether it's even worth it anymore. And I'm beginning to see that in the normies, that even they are being pushed to the brink of how low of a quality of life they're willing to endure. And I think that the proletariat is being pushed closer and closer off of a cliff to accept what could never be considered normal 20 years ago. Because we're the first generation that has done worse than our grandparents, than our parents. We're doing worse. I'm the most educated person in my entire family. I'm one of the most educated people you guys are going to meet. Look how I live. This shouldn't be the life of a person who's accomplished this much academically, but instead, I work, shoulder to shoulder with people who don't have my level of education. And I've never been able to use my education for anything other than to feel ashamed of where I work and what I do. Every morning when I wake up, I feel ashamed, like a total failure. I'm a loser, a bona fide loser who can't get up. There's nowhere to get up to. Someone was asking me today, it's like, well, how's your job search going? It's like, these corporations don't want to offer anything but minimum wage and then complain about how people don't want to work hard or complain about people not wanting to be in the workplace. The workers are fed up with this world and they don't want to be workers anymore. They never have. Remember my phrase that pays? Nobody wants to work anymore. Nobody's ever wanted to work. If we had food and shelter, we would spend our times doing the things that we like. But instead, this is what we have. Some sort of dystopian post-COVID world where everyone is suffering from isolation and loneliness to some extent. You don't even have to acknowledge the fact that this is happening to you. Talking point number 3, surface level interactions. We talk to people every day, but beyond the basics, what do we really say to each other? NPCs speak to each other all day long. It's like we're speaking in gibberish. I must have had a dozen conversations today with different people that all could have been like blah, 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 blah. And then they pause and they say blah, 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 blah. Pause, blah, 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 blah. That's how the whole day passed for me. There's nothing beyond the surface level interactions. How was your day? What did you do this weekend? Oh, I can't wait for the weekend. It's already Thursday. You're like, this isn't a conversation. It doesn't even come close to qualifying as a conversation. It's just noise between most of us. And when all you're doing is making noise towards one another, that's what social media is. We're just making a bunch of noise. When I see people making TikToks, it's just noise. There's no meaning. There's no deep connection. It's just noise between two people who don't matter and who have nothing meaningful to say. When I get home from work, I just sit here. The only point of my sitting here is waiting for the bell to ring for me to go back to a crummy job. And as I told Gen Z today, this isn't a career, man. You're stuck in a dead-end hellhole. And he just kind of looked at me like, you're stupid, Millennial Steen. And I just looked at him again. Just noise. Just noise coming out of his mouth, noise coming out of my mouth. Nothing worth listening to. And I think that's what's really causing the deep isolation and feelings of loneliness in our societies. We're not engaged anymore. We disengaged from work a long time ago. We disengaged from society a long time ago. Now we're just kind of there's just workplace theater. There's social theater. In fact, today, one of the people that I was talking to said that she edited her public personality to be more likable. What the hell does that mean? Edited my public personality? So what you're telling me is you did this. You consciously knew that you needed to fix your face, right? Get rid of that straight line that you call your face and make sure that you're always smiling like some sort of weird doll. But with that said, I did have a last talking point, but I don't think I'm going to try to squeeze it in. It wouldn't do it any justice. So the talking point was taking back real connections. Putting more effort into in-person conversations. Unfortunately, that's an entire 20-minute video that I don't have time to do right now. I'm not sure if I did talking point number two twice, but I am extremely not physically tired, but emotionally tired from the workplace today. All those pointless conversations with people you would never talk to if you weren't at work, they drain you. This whole world is constantly draining us of our emotional energy. And by the time we get home from Evil Corp, all we are is a worthless ball of skin, fat, and despair.